They are lying to you about this shutdown. The media says it's a revolt against President Trump's immigration crackdown, but that is a big lie. Here's George Soros's favorite senator, Chris Murphy, on Fox yesterday.
We're still pretending that ICE is going after dangerous people. They aren't. Right now, 70% of the people that they are detaining have absolutely no criminal record. What is happening?
DHS says 70% of those they're arresting, and that's their number, do have some kind of criminal record.
What is happening in Minnesota right now is a dystopia. ICE is tear gassing elementary schools. It is disappearing legal residents into cars. It is murdering American citizens.
The governors of Minnesota, New Jersey, and New York all say they want the government shut down until the Trump administration reforms ICE to their specifications and abandons the immigration policies which got Trump elected. But this shutdown is not even really about ICE. It is a desperate reaction to an economic declaration of war on the globalist free trade system by President Trump. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've studied the battle between the American system and the British free trade system ever since I first read about the American system back in the early 1970s. Today, I'll expose the Democrats' true motivation, show you how this parallels the first Civil War under Abraham Lincoln, and explain exactly how we win this battle in the midterms. So if you're up for taking the country back, please like and share this video. It increases our reach on YouTube. The Democrats go for civil war. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz let the cat out of the bag last week in his interview with The Atlantic. He said President Trump's enforcement of immigration laws is about to cause a new civil war. New Jersey's Governor Mickey Sherrill and New York Governor Kathy Hochul made similar statements. They are now vowing massive state resistance to the federal enforcement of immigration laws. Here's Walz.
So look, we all think we all want to avoid that, but I think the reality has sunk in this week. If you thought you could pass this by and you thought there was nothing there, I mean, is this a Fort Sumter, John Brown moment? Where are we at on this?
Fort Sumter, John Brown? Are the Antifa thugs in Minnesota claiming John Brown's terrorist mantle? That accelerated the Civil War. The insurrectionists at the Atlantics just love to push that out there. But by the end of the week, the president had informed the blue states that he is not falling for their Civil War con. He announced the feds will now not go into the insurrectionist sanctuary states to help with crime. They will do so only if the blue states ask and say, please. Let them find the billions to fill the holes in their budgets caused by their sanctuary policies and support of mass immigration on their own without federal help. Let them fail for now on their own. President Trump also said the feds will protect all federal buildings and federal law enforcement personnel ruthlessly, and federal immigration enforcement will continue. The president also announced other flanks. He appointed a new prosecutor in the Justice Department who will report directly to him. Assistant Attorney General Colin McDonald will be going after the fraud in public programs in Minnesota, California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and elsewhere. And that's the mainstay of Democratic Party funding, both the funding of the street rioters and of Democratic Party candidates and officials. The FBI raided the Fulton County, Georgia election warehouse last week, a raid attended by Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard's attendance signals that foreign involvement in the rigged 2020 Biden victory is under investigation. This also has the Democrats in a complete panic. And there is every indication that a grand jury in Fort Pierce, Florida, is now meeting with John Brennan, James Comey, and other participants in the fraud known as Rushgate under criminal investigation. You'll get a whole lot more perspective on the present moment by subscribing to our newsletter. You'll find all of our videos and posts there, along with the receipts showing you why we're saying what we're saying. Now, this is really a fight about free trade versus the American system. When U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer stepped forward on January 20th at Davos, he defined the real battle now behind everything. It's between the free trade system of globalization and the unique American system of economy invented by Alexander Hamilton and now brought forward again by Donald Trump. Today, I just want to play the part of his speech about Lincoln's economic policy and the difference with the slave system of the South under British free trade control. Here it is.
American ingenuity and productivity was held back by Southern slavery, which kept the country tied to an exploitative and backwards planter class that pushed ceaselessly for free trade. Southern millionaires wanted to sell the cotton that their slaves grew to the British and buy cheap foreign manufactured goods in return, and had no interest in supporting American industry or any idea of a broader American project. The South at that time apparently preferred a colonial model for its own economy, with the South playing the part of commodity-producing economy. So it should come as no surprise that President Abraham Lincoln was a strong proponent of tariffs. Or in President Lincoln's own words, "My politics are short and sweet, like the old woman's dance. I am in favor of a national bank, I'm in favor of the internal improvement system, and a high protective tariff." President Lincoln famously was among the first Republicans, and he set a policy for Republicans early on. President Lincoln had an influential advisor named Henry Carey. Has anyone heard of this guy? Seriously, who's heard of him? One, okay, one person, two? Okay, two people, that's good. That's actually pretty good. But Henry Carey, he did more than anyone, arguably even Hamilton, I think, in laying out the rationale for America's development agenda, as I'll discuss later, his global impact, and he inspired much of the world to copy it.
Lincoln, like Trump, came to power with a population that had lost touch with many of the founding principles of the nation. The extant political parties absolutely stunk. Like Trump, Lincoln confronted a Democratic Party which was completely under control of the slave masters and the British Empire. Lincoln knew our founding principles had to be reawakened if he was going to save the nations. By recreating the culture of the nation, of the Union, he made the instrument which would defeat slavery. Here's a portion of what he said. They, the Revolutionary War generation, were the pillars of the Temple of Liberty, and now that they have crumbled away, that temple must fall, unless we, their descendants, supply their places with other pillars, hewn from the solid quarry of sober reason. Passion has helped us, but can do so no more. It will be, in the future, our enemy. Reason, cold, calculating, unimpassioned reason, must furnish all the materials for our future support and defense. Let those materials be molded into general intelligence, sound morality, and in particular, a reverence for the Constitution and laws. Under the Obama and Biden administrations, the unique culture which allows us to define ourselves as a nation, to define what is worth fighting for, was lost in a sea of foreign cultures. And the globalist open border immigration policies carry no mandate to assimilate. In his new book, Invisible Coup, Peter Schweitzer demonstrates that these immigration policies are a deliberate, subversive tactic aimed at the destruction of the republic. They are funded and supported by foreign governments to destroy any coherence in our national culture. The policy of exporting murderers, the insane, and sleeper terrorist cells started with the Mario boat lift of Fidel Castro back during the Carter administration. Under Clinton and Gore, uncontrolled immigration with full government subsidies to immigrants was seen as the path to a permanent electoral majority. That's the treason Donald Trump is now cleaning up. Now let's think about the Republic's almost fatal last 16 years. The City of London's current public face, Canada's Mark Carney, has played a leading role throughout the recent 16-year City of London offensive to finally destroy this country. It commenced with Barack Obama's election and the global bank bailouts of 2008, which saddled us with the huge debts that still plague us. Carney is now trying to play China against the United States in conjunction with both the UK and the EU. It is a direct and desperate response to President Trump's new declaration of independence at Davos. Carney has always sought to destroy us. In a 2019 speech at Jackson Hole, Carney called for an end to the dollar's role as the world's reserve currency. He proposed that a multipolar synthetic currency managed by the world's central bankers take the dollar's place. That same conference proposed that the Congress and the president should have no role in setting financial policies. Instead, experts, central bankers should take over this role. That policy was largely implemented by the Treasury and the Fed under Joe Biden. Otherwise, Carney, as one of the world's climate czars, declared that COVID would force nation states to finally submit to globalist control of credit and currency because this was necessary to actually fight climate change. Now, despite the fact that the president's economic policies have driven inflation down, drastically reduced the trade deficit, raised workers' wages, and resulted in an unparalleled 5% economic growth rate, his message is not getting through sufficiently to the public, despite the fact that factories are being built and shovels are in the ground all over the country. Part of this is the result of endless negative propaganda by the media, day in and day out. The capture of many state Republican parties by the old guard rhinos is another significant factor. A third factor is the so-called influencers, who claim to be all in for the president, but insist on pushing their own rage-fueled and clickbait agendas and second-guess him at every turn. We found this meme by Brandon Dilley to be particularly apt for the moment.
Do you remember what it was like when the 2020 election was rigged and stolen? Do you remember all the bullshit stories people told you about how the fraudulent election would be overturned? Do you remember the symbols of tyranny when fences went up around D.C. for Joe Biden's inauguration? Do you remember watching fuel and food prices skyrocket in a matter of months? Do you remember watching our borders being invaded by a virtual army of unidentified criminals? Do you remember watching our nation get systematically destroyed for 4 years by the Joe Biden autopen administration? Do you remember longing for the days of winning when we had Donald Trump in the White House? Do you remember thinking he was going to die when the bullet aimed at his brain only grazed his ear? Do you remember rejoicing after witnessing the miracle that saved his life? Do you remember celebrating the epic landslide victory in November of 2024? This is what you hoped for. This is what you prayed for. This is what you voted for. So why are you questioning every decision he makes now that he's back in office? God didn't save his life so he could make mistakes. He knows what he's doing. Maybe it's time to shut the fuck up and let him cook. This has been a public service announcement paid for by the Dilley meme team.
Winning the midterms requires educating the population on Trump's real economic and foreign policy revolution and real American history. Everyone with an audience who claims to be on board with the president has to get on board with this task in unison. We're doing that here at Promethean Action, and our growth shows it's resonated. That's because people are sick of being manipulated into rages about the news of the moment and are hungry for profound ideas. The midterm clock is ticking now, and we need to expand and scale up our efforts. Please subscribe to the newsletter and join our community if you haven't already. The link is in the description. I'll see you again on Thursday for our question and answer show. Thanks so much for listening.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.